ado, I'm really privileged to welcome Rohini Srivathsa, who's right with me to deliver the keynotes for the conference. So, a brief about Rohini. Dr. Rohini is a National Technology Officer at Microsoft India, and in her role, she's responsible for driving innovation and growth through intensity across industry and the government. Rohini began her career in R&D at AT&T Bell Laboratories, then moved to a career in strategy consulting at Boston Consulting Group and IBM Global Business Services. As CTO of Janalakshmi Financial Services, Rohini was responsible for driving tech-driven business transformation towards financial inclusion among the urban underserved. Rohini is a thought leader, advisor, contributor to several industry, government, and academia entities. She holds an MBA from Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania, earned her PhD in computer engineering from University of Texas at Austin, and serves as adjunct faculty at the Indian School of Business Executive Education. I'm really excited to welcome you here, Rohini. The stage is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavitra, and thanks everyone for having me here. Really delighted to be a part of this event. I thought I will speak on a topic that we hear a lot about and actually is quite close to my heart. And the topic is learning. We hear a lot about learning, and before you start to think, okay, yet another learning conversation, let me try to frame it to say that I'd like to speak about the why, the what, and the how of learning. And mostly my discussion here is going to be my reflections over my journey of more than 3 decades now. But I'm hoping that you take something out of it in the way that I'd like to frame this topic of learning. So let's begin with the why. So we'll go why, what, and how. So when we go with the why do we learn? Depending on your specific goal, you may have a promotion coming up or a project coming up or something that you are trying to achieve. You may be looking at learning because of that specific goal. Maybe it's a degree or some certification, etc. Or you could be learning to just develop some kind of a skill or competency, or learning of a new domain, maybe design thinking or coding in a particular language. I think the third learning approach of the why of learning is the love of learning. It's the thinking of learning being an end in itself. Look, when we think about children and we look at our own lives, when do we learn at the fastest rate? At a rate that we probably don't achieve any other time in our lives. And that's children. Children ask the simplest of questions, they have curiosity, and they are not afraid to ask, why, what, how does this work, why is it in some way sometimes it can be a little bit infuriating, but they have that insatiable curiosity. So I think the important element in as we grow in our careers is, of course, there will be goals and there are competencies and skills you want to achieve, but I think developing that internal love for learning, the internal curiosity, a childlike curiosity, is such a powerful tool that it becomes a purpose in itself. And I find people of that attitude or that perspective very, very fascinating and very inspiring. I'll give you a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, which I absolutely love. It says, "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever." I find this just a very, very powerful way of thinking about learning. And in my experience, there are times when I found um, that I'm feeling low or I'm feeling somewhat demotivated. And sometimes it's just getting into learning something new, something different that brings me out of that sense or a negativity or whatever one might be feeling. So I think understanding that why and even thinking in your own mind as to what or rather the why part of learning is really quite important, especially as we go further in our lives, because you cannot um, keep thinking that there is a particular goal. You have to think of the journey. You have to think of of the joy of learning in itself. So, with the why behind us, let me go into the what. Clearly, all of us, I'm assuming many of the folks in this audience are people in the technology world, but in any case, anything you want to learn, whether it's some art or art form of music or sculpture, or it may be language, or anything, history, or technology, there are different approaches to what you might learn. But in the world of technology, and assuming a lot of you are in the world of technology, I think there's a one powerful concept that you might have heard about is having a T-shaped learning approach. A T-shaped, sometimes it's called T-shaped career, but a T-shaped learning agenda. What does that mean? When you say a T-shaped, it means it has got a horizontal and then it's got a vertical, right? And the vertical is meant to be an area, one area, two areas, maybe a couple of areas, whatever, where you are the expert. You are absolutely the expert. Why is that important? Because you see, we are in an area where technology is changing fast, but as you grow in your career, your, of course, your breadth has to increase, and I will come to that in a second. But few topics where you really aspire to be the known person. What are you known for? Somebody once asked me earlier in my career, what are you known for? What do you want to be known for? And it was a rhetorical question, of course, but it's made me think that, is there a few areas where I'm really, really pushing the boundary? And the need for that is, at the end of the day, we all cannot be experts at everything, but we have to be an expert, or in some level a depth person in something. It could be a piece of technology, it could be an industry, it could be a function, like human resources or marketing or whatever, or it could be, as I said, a technology area, whatever it is. But there is merit in going deeper. But let me now talk about the flat of the T, right? And I think you'll understand why I'm talking about the T thing. So let's look at the flat part of the T, which is the breadth part. And the breadth part I would think about in at least three dimensions. I'm sure there can be more, but let me say there are three dimensions, right? One is that of industry. Second would be functions, and third would be technology. So let me give an example. So let us say you are an expert in machine learning, okay? But if you are a technical expert in machine learning, your ability to really make an impact using that depth of technology is very dependent on your ability to articulate, demonstrate, communicate how machine learning is can add value or can create impact in some context. So if I take an example, let's say, how can machine learning solve customer retention problem in banking at scale? What did I say here? What I said was, machine learning is the area that is your depth area, right? But what I said is, I took three axes. I took industry, I took functions, and I took technology. Industry in banking, customer acquisition, clearly a marketing and sales role, right? Function. And at scale, which means, are you thinking of data? Are you thinking of data lakes? Are you thinking about cloud? So the point being that your ability to make an impact at scale, and especially as you grow in your career, in your ability to communicate with stakeholders is very key. And that's where that breadth comes in. Because now what you do is, you've got your depth in the area that you specialize in, but you're able to make connections to industry, functions, technology at least, but I'm sure there are more. And I think in the world of technology today, um, if you see the broader trends out there, every industry, every function is becoming more and more technology driven. In fact, there are numbers which say that there are more tech talent hired in industries which are not traditionally tech industries. So, which means that every industry is looking to become tech enabled. And therefore, if you are in that space of, let's say, we gave the example of being a marketing and sales organization in a banking industry, and you're using data to determine how should your sales force be deployed, your ability to create impact in that context is very dependent on your your communication, your translation of the business problem into a data problem or a technology problem, and then translating that into what the technology can do, and then be able to demonstrate and articulate what the impact was. Right. So that ability you will increase as you see the dots connect. In fact, if you don't even forget about the technology world, there is a very interesting article. There's a book called Range, and if you go to my LinkedIn, I've got an article there called "Expand Your Range," and in that, and I'm a big believer of that because the idea is that as you there are many great. People across the world of sports, the world of arts, Michelangelo, etc., who were very diverse in their expertise, and they connected dots between very different fields. And I postulate that as we go forward in the world, I think more and more innovation will happen in the intersection of disciplines. So I may be even provocative enough to say that our disciplines of electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, even biology, chemistry, these are very man-made constructs. I don't think nature thinks about whether it's a biology problem or it's a chemistry problem. So I think the ability, and while I thought that in the 20-25 years of my career since my PhD days, there's a lot of interdisciplinary work going on, but I still find that no, we are still quite far from becoming very interdisciplinary, and we will need to be. And the ability for you to become interdisciplinary is dependent on your being able to connect your dots, expanding your range. But I think depending on, of course, the role you are playing, if you're a general manager, maybe the breadth is enough. But I'm saying that I think that combination of being expert in something and having that T-shaped thing I just talked about is very powerful in your being able to see those patterns. Now, let me come to the how. So I spoke about the why of learning, the what of learning, and let me now come to the how of learning. Now, how of learning is really a lifelong journey. I mean, it is an evolving thing for me. And it's very fascinating when I observe others as to how they learn. First of all, of course, it is a part about it's a mindset, right? Because learning is not easy. The fact that you're learning is the fact is that you don't know something. That's why you're learning it, right? So it's not easy. It's got ups and downs and not very good days. And there, the mindset plays a role. So, if you are familiar with the whole concept of growth mindset, and there's a professor called Carol Dweck who's written that powerful book, I would recommend that very much. To say that, how do you think about a growth mindset? So, if you don't know something, you say, I don't know this yet. you know that's a point about saying, okay, that element of realizing that you are always learning. So first of all, of course, it begins with a mindset. But I think the how of learning changes as we go in our lives, and one finds different ways. So one thing we do early in our careers, clearly, right, is we take courses, we do degrees, we certifications, etc. etc. I think of that as a linear way of learning, because what I mean by that is your rate of learning is really growing linearly with the time and the effort that you're putting in, right? And so it's linear. But if you think about it, the rate of knowledge out there is actually growing exponentially, right? It is going we know that. I mean, we're seeing in different areas of technology, whatever you might call any area, it's the world is growing and knowledge is growing exponentially. So how are you going to cope with that exponential problem with a linear mindset? You can't. So you need to create some hacks. I think of them as hacks that you need to create, that you evolve, you experiment, and you learn for this lifelong learning process. Because there are some things you will learn linearly. For example, if you want to, the earlier when I spoke about the T-shaped thing, many things in that depth area or the specialized area may require some linear kind of how or linear approaches, like taking a certification, getting a degree, and and really going deep into it. Yes, but then for the different whats, there are different hows. So how do you grow, for example, on the breadth part, right? The breadth part, you can't possibly go and read every possible technology and every possible industry. That linear model, like I said, it won't work, right? Because the world is growing exponentially. So how do you create that non-linear way of working? How do you create those hacks? People try different things, and I observe people about that. I mean, I think I took some time to get these, and it's a constant journey. So I'll share a couple of them. Right, one is of course networking. Meet people, because if you meet people, especially people who who are in general following the topics that you are interested in, who are themselves interested in learning whatever, right, you meet them and you are kind of getting a synthesis, or you can kind of getting a summary of some things, right? It may not be the depth, but that's not what you're seeking, right? So I think that networking, I in fact have a friend who's a long distance runner, and he runs with people and he calls them runversations. So I find him so knowledgeable because he's constantly speaking with people and he's constantly learning. Another hack, because now you are using that nonlinear effect, right? You're using a network effect, and of course you have stuff to share, so I'm sure others are benefiting as well. Another hack could be that follow thought leaders on social media. I follow a few people on Twitter, particularly because that seems to be a space where many of the people who I would love to learn from and understand their points of views are there. So I follow them. I mean, I'm not that much on it, but it helps me be that nonlinear, right? I mean, it helps me think about how some of these foremost people in the different technology areas or policy areas or strategy areas are thinking about. The third hack I would share with you is reverse mentoring, and it's amazing. What I mean by that is, you may be at different parts stages of your career, even if you're quite senior. Getting somebody who's really technical, or depending on the area, who's starting in one's career, and having that person teach you something is very powerful. I remember I'd taken on the CTO role at Jan Lakshmi, and while I had a lot of technology experience, etc., I had not really put enough time thinking deeply about how the data flow happens in a core banking system. So I'd asked one person in my team, and I was, leading a very large team there in the IT world as the CTO. But I asked her, just take me through like a 101, just and I saw her face lit up. It was just beautiful because one, it's a win-win. I mean, the other person feels great about being able to display what they know, especially a junior person starting in their careers, and you get to learn. So I mean, and now, for example, I am working with a fairly technical person in Microsoft, and I am getting reverse mentored on a topic that I'm learning about today. And that's the best way I can learn. And I'm like, you are my teacher. It's your job to get me past this milestone. So it's great. And yeah, and I think that's a few hacks I would say in terms of doing that non-linear way of learning. I remember when I was finishing my PhD, my advisor said to me that a PhD doesn't teach you what to learn, and definitely doesn't teach you all there is to learn. In fact, you feel quite stupid at the end of a PhD because you realize how much you don't know. But what he said is that the PhD teaches you how to learn. It teaches you how to independently learn and be in that journey. So I have to say, my journey of learning continues, and I find it thrilling and very, very deeply satisfying. So I'll just close with saying that I hope you found this approach of thinking about learning in terms of the why of learning, what of learning, and the how of it. I'm happy to answer questions and wish you all a very happy lifelong learning journey.
Thank you, Rohini. I think that was great and amazing. But one thing that now that, when we have to pivot to different subjects, like my entire career might have been on one technology, but I find that, say, AI, machine learning, blockchain, Web3, I mean, there's no dearth of new things which are coming. So how do you prepare yourself at the onset before you decide to do it? Like, okay, I'm going to take this up and I'm going to be really faced with a wall that I don't know anything. So how do you overcome that initial hiccup, which is like, okay, absolutely nothing makes sense. So how do you keep going?
So, like I said, I think depending on what is the level of depth you want to get into a particular technology area, right? You may speak with a few people, you may look at some articles, you may take some initial courses, but yeah, there is always in any new area some initial ground to cover. But I think what ends up happening is when you are constantly in that learning mode, you start to see dots that connect with what you've already know. So it becomes a launch pad for new areas as well. Of course, if you say, Rohini, how do I learn Spanish? It's orthogonal, completely orthogonal to what I do, right? So there I have to say, okay, you know what? I need to get linear. I need to get into a class, and I need to really. I can't just somehow talk to people and learn it. But now, if I know Spanish, then adjacent languages like Portuguese, it's possible to accelerate one's learning in very different ways, right? So if you look at South Indian languages, many people who learn one language uh, get pretty fast in learning other languages, right? Maybe the first language is that linear way. So I think it's again, it's a combination, and it's also the what you're trying to achieve in that. So the how depends also on the what. So right, when I mentioned about that T-shaped thing, and I said that if you're trying to get breadth on what's happening in the world of web.3 and metaverse and what's happening with NFTs, etc., but you are looking to understand how these technologies are shaping up, of course at senior levels, you're shaping up, but you have an expertise, let's say, in data, right? So what you are, let's say your depth of expertise in data is, then you are saying, how will data play a role in the way NFTs will work? How will data play a role in the way the privacy will happen, let's say in the world of metaverse, right? So your depth is now connecting dots to the other parts of your breadth. So again, it depends on the what. But now, if you say, Rohini, I want to become an expert in the way virtual reality or in the way metaverse will happen in the world of, let's say, education, that now requires a different approach, because now you're saying, I want to go deep. So means there is some level of linear thinking has to happen. You need to go deep. But depending on what else you've been doing, you'll start to see connect the dots.
Right. I think, yeah, that was wonderfully said, and which eventually brings me to the second question, which is like, in your experience, being a jack of all trades or a master of one, like, what do you think eventually? Because sometimes we might need both, and like, how do you strike a balance between that, being a jack of all trades or being a master of one, or like being a SME in one, or like something. Sometimes you might be needing both. So how do you know? How do you decide?
Yeah, so that's what I mentioned. I think, look, in my role as Microsoft India CTO, I am expected to know about a lot of things. So I work in a different way, right? I am constantly like a sponge. I'm constantly listening and learning. But I'm very clear, having been in the world of deep technical depth, that I am not an expert in everything. But I do take a view that you should be an expert in one or two, at least a few things. One or two, I'm just giving as a, as a number. But because the point is that, especially if your world is technology, if you're a general manager, if you're an operations person, then it's a different, thing. I'm speaking to people as technologists right now. If you're a technologist, then your ability to um, create value, deliver value, be somebody who's really respected, is very dependent on your having expertise. And not in everything. I'm very open to say, I don't understand one area or another. Please teach me. That's what I meant by reverse mentoring, right? But I would say, if you're in tech, I think it is important to have some area that you are known for.
That was, I think we have quite a few questions on chat. I'll pick one. As the
Sure.
technology officer, what are the technologies to focus for the next 3 years?
Sorry, as a technology, sorry, can you repeat that? What is
What
technology
are
focus
the
on next?
technologies to focus for the next 3 years?
Okay. Look, I think we are in a world, as you know, that's digitally just exploding. There's exponential rise in digital technologies. And along with digital, there are There is explosion of data, there's explosion of automation, there's explosion of customer experiences. So I think it's a question of saying that if you think about digitization, that's digital technologies, that is the overarching theme. But I know that's a very high level theme, and I'm very conscious of the fact that it's a high level theme, because that digitization is leading to what we're having this conference, for example, hybrid work. What's this leading to? That there is enough of the world out there that's getting digitized. So you are seeing interspersing of the digital and physical worlds, which is what metaverse is all about. Okay, because the digital is happening, there is data getting created, which is all AI ML is all about, right? So what I'm saying is that if you decide to go, so without getting into the element of sort of picking one or two favorite topics, I would look at digital as a theme, and I would go down areas that are of interest to you, depending on the interest, depending on the industry you are in, the vertical you are in, and what you enjoy, and go down that path. Because as a thematic on digital, I think whether it's cloud, whether it is new forms of computing, we are in a space where technology is going to be central.
Right, right. I think that was very well explained. So I'll pick one more question in from chat. Um, how do you stay on top of your game when there is new talent coming in daily?
Very good question. Look, I think that's what I meant by saying that. Um, Look, I think of new talent as a group of partners who can help me, and I have something to offer them. So the way I would think about it is that um, you need to think about your learning journey in a way that says um, there is a technology element, but as you grow in your career, you have to be able to create impact. Technology is not an end in itself. And your ability to create that impact, your ability to show value, is drawing from not just your technology skills. It's drawing from your very practical skills, your ability to do stakeholder management, your ability to take people along. Those things are things that you're building upon while you continue to learn tech. So in your mind, you should have this portfolio view, right? And that is why it's important to say that, to do non-linear learning, and and we talked in this entire thing all about what I might call the hard skills. We didn't even go down soft skills. And by the way, I think in the world which is becoming more and more automation and AI driven, soft skills actually are going to be even more important. Ability to communicate, ability to collaborate, ability to see dots connecting across different domains. Those are soft skills that one develops. And some people have it inherently earlier in career, but by and large, people develop it through experience. So don't undersell that. So I don't think it's a matter of competition. I think it's a complementarity. And the areas where you want to learn, like I mentioned, I reach out to somebody and say, you know what, you are my teacher, you teach me. I don't have time to get into technical, but I want to learn this. So become my mentor.
Right, right. So yeah, I think that soft skills part is absolutely, I mean, I think that might be
Yeah.
another yeah.
It's a whole session. I mean, I'm sure. I was looking at the agenda. There are a lot of very interesting sessions in terms of branding. I think we underestimate. In fact, I think if I may be bold enough to say, because I've also been in the world of sort of the business and strategy, I can be bold enough to say that sometimes I think we don't realize, or we probably overemphasize just the technology part. And we have to remember that you need to make it relevant for your stakeholders. You need to be able to translate, you need to be able to look at contexts, and also people skills, the soft skills of being able to take people along in creating that collaboration and ability to really make an impact at scale.
Right. I think that was the whole proper 360-degree or as how much we can cram in 30 minutes, but it was a wonderful, wonderful session, Dr. Rohini, and we learned a lot. I mean, and especially with this PhD, how it reinforces learning and the way of learning, the how of learning. It was absolutely delightful to hear all this. And I think thank you so much for your time, and it was a wonderful, wonderful session. And the comments in the chat, there are people, some PhD folks who have joined, and they are so thrilled to have
Oh, that's
the same.
great. Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I saw that. Some people, great, enjoy the journey. It's a lovely journey.
Yeah, so I think there is just one last question. How much do you think technical certification really help in standing out and proving your skills? Like, since we have almost an end up, a kind of thing with upgrad and whatnot everywhere, you keep seeing these things. So do you really
Yeah.
think it helps?
Yeah, so I think to me, I mean, look, what is a certification? It's a demonstration that you have completed some learning and reached a milestone. It's not necessarily a demonstration of your ability to apply that. Not very many certifications. There are capstone projects and all of that, but clearly they are a well defined project. It's not the real world, right? So in some respects there is a technical and I'm kind of, I know, limiting my answer, but in some respects it shows one thing it shows is that your um, your thirst for learning, your ability to go out there, put it. So I think it is a signal. It's not necessarily a um, you know a sort of a gating factor. It's a signal. I don't think I will hire somebody just because the person has a bunch of certifications, right? It is a good thing for me to see the person has been learning, has been investing in learning, is interested in learning, is curious, is going out there. But I wouldn't hire somebody because of certifications. I would hire somebody based on the impact the person has created, based on the
Right.
person's ability to really collaborate. And that those are very soft skills, right? So certification is good. I do some certification, and I do, even now I do certification. The reason I do them is because for me it's like, okay, I want to reach that milestone and I want to kind of say, okay, I'm Azure certified, done. So it for me becomes like an internal benchmark that I say, I could learn Azure. I don't have to get certified. I mean, I could learn AI, I could learn whatever different thing, but I just sort of say make it like a milestone. And
Right.
I just love the challenge of challenge of it. It's fun.
Like just the thrill of completing it and like, going through the
Yeah,
journey of, like you said,
more
oh,
the fun.
that's
But
that.
I wouldn't say certifications is the way I'm going to grow my career. No, no.
Yeah.
It's not the way to think about it.
Okay. Okay. So it's just a good to have on top of the main skills that it stands on top of
Yeah,
that. No,
but
yeah.
get the certifications to get the I mean basic skills if you want, but that's the beginning of the journey. Learn to apply them, learn to communicate them, learn to be able to create impact with them.
Wonderful. I think here, even though we won't be able to take questions, we are so close on time with a wonderful, wonderful session. I personally learned a lot, and with the comments I see, people also, we had a lot that we are taking away from this session, Dr. Rohini. Thank you so much for your time today, and it was a wonderful session. Have a great
Thank
weekend,
you.
and thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.